All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and jump into this. I'm going to give the floor to Dallas. So, Dallas, if you're ready, go ahead.
All right, thanks, Will. Today we're going to be talking about how we can get better golf through stats. Give you a preview of our new V1 Coach app and show you how V1 Game can help your students improve and help you get connected to what they're doing on course. So, first question we're going to ask is why statistics? Why do you care? Well, first, improving scoring is difficult. So, depending on weather, course conditions, and all kinds of factors, a score may not necessarily be reflective of whether the student is improving in any general area. Improving just a swing is not enough. So you can have a golfer with a perfect swing, but if they're making bad decisions and knocking it all over the place, going for pins they shouldn't be going at, then they're going to still make mistakes and it may not translate. So knowing what they're doing on the course can help them make better decisions. And then stickiness. So obviously your players want to get better. So you want to make sure that they're working on the right things to really translate to that score and help them improve. If they work on the wrong things, they'll move on and see that the lessons just aren't really helping them play better golf. And then lastly, the best understand the benefits of stats and understand the benefits of setting goals. So having an application or a way to go see how finer tuned points of driving or approach are improving, give you another way to make sure your students are making progress. And so you'll see on the right here, Justin Thomas, after playing, he sets roughly a third of his goals, or I would say statistically based goals, to try to have under par scoring on all the par threes, plus 0.3 strokes gained in putting, so on and so forth. So, finer tuned goals on statistics based things. So to be able to measure that for your students and to help them achieve those goals is tremendously valuable. And that's where V1 Coach and V1 Game come in and can help you do that. Really our goal here in these two apps is to make teaching easier. So we realize that our golfers, our teachers are not data scientists. So really this needs to be automated and it needs to be easy to understand so that we can just point you in the right direction on where you need to focus that lesson or focus that practice if you're a student. We know that you've got a lot of students and in general, people don't have a lot of time to go analyze this data. So we want to make the data very actionable and upfront and easy to understand. So you can see on the right here where we can quickly point out, hey, driving accuracy is where you need to work on and you're missing to the right and it's costing you X amount of strokes per round. That type of analysis that we're doing for you, automated in the app, giving you that feedback so that you can go to your instructor, or if you're an instructor, you can go to that student and say, this is what we need to work on today. The combination of these two apps also allows you to be synchronized with the students or synchronized with your teacher, whereas you're collecting all that data, playing golf, those rounds, that information is getting pushed to your teacher. It's all in the cloud to where they can see the last round you played. They can see how you're doing and vice versa. So you can really have that good feedback loop to really help improve and then connect with the other offerings from V1 and the V1 Golf app to work on those swing lessons and actually start improving the flaws that are causing some of these things. So with that being said, I'm going to jump over into a demo of our latest V1 Coach app that's in beta testing here. So when you open V1 Coach for the first time, it's going to have you log in here. Really, it's looking for your V1 Game login. So if you've never started an account with V1 Game or you've never used the V1 Game app for tracking your rounds, what the students would use basically to track rounds on course, clicking on that register button will pull up a pop-up that'll actually link you to the V1 Game app. So you can go download that, log in and get an account. Once you have an account, you'll log in here. And it'll take you to the home screen. Now, if you don't have a team, you never started a team, you're going to get options to either load an existing team, create a new team, or load a demo team. First thing we'll do is go ahead and load the demo team so I can kind of show you what the app is all about, how it works, and then we'll dive into how you would create a new team and then what the players see on the player side. So in this case, I've loaded our demo team, which is V1 University. So immediately you can see that they have a home course. This is a course, Pecan Hollow is one nearby where I live. And then you've got recent rounds of all your players. So going through, it's going to give you up front who's playing recently, what they've scored, how they're doing. Clicking on any of those guys will take you straight to their account where you can start analyzing and saying, okay, here's round history. You've got strokes gained information on each of those scores. They're on the right-hand side where you can see where they're playing and how they're playing. In the middle, these are all individual pieces of information on their game that you can click in and dive in and kind of see what it is they're doing. First, we'll back out of that. This updates daily. So if it hasn't updated within the last 24 hours, it'll go pull and see if your students have any more recent rounds or any more information that you should have in front of you to go look at. If you click the manage button over here, you can manage that team. So in this case, I can see players that I've invited to the team on the bottom left and whether they've accepted or declined my invite to join the team. On the right-hand side, I've got a list of players. So I could add new players, for instance. Let me go add myself so that later I can show you what this looks like when they get a request. It'll have you email that player. So in this case, it's going to email that player and say, hey, join my team on V1 University. It's going to give you a link to the app for Apple and for Android for them to go download it and join that team. So I'll shoot that off. And now that player has an invite. You'll see in the bottom left that I have a pending invite to that particular player. You can delete and edit those requests. So maybe your player says, I didn't see it, or I declined it and I didn't mean to. You could resend that request, or you can delete requests that you no longer want to offer to that student to join your team. On the right-hand side, so you see that list of players, you can delete and manage your players there as well. Now, if you have a lot of players, let's say you're a teaching pro and you've got, 100 players or something that you're managing, you can also group those players. So for instance, I could go group it into, let's say I got a group of juniors I want to manage. I could type that in. It's going to add a group. Basically, you can think of that kind of as a sub team, to where now I could go take a player and I can go move them up to where they're in that sub team. So let's do another one. Let's say I'm a high school coach and I've got a varsity and I've got a junior varsity. And I can add those groups and you'll see them there on the left, where I can go say, okay, Lion Trees is on my junior varsity team. Jim Furious is on my junior varsity team. So on and so forth. Basically, what this allows you to do is to group the players so that whenever you're in the rest of the app, you can quickly find what it is that you're looking for. So let's say I've got that team like I want it. Let's go look at some of their stats. So if I'm a teaching professional, what I might want to do is go into the teaching section, and what you'll see, again, these students now are grouped by those groups I just created. But by default, it's going to look at their last 5 rounds, and it's telling them what they should be working on based on those last 5 rounds. So for the top 2, you can see really it's saying, hey, they should be working on short game. For instance, for Jim Furious, he's 2 chipping once per round. So at least once per round, he's trying to get on the green and not getting on the green. For Jordan Spoof here, you can see that he's struggling with his approach game. He tends to miss short. He's only hitting 61% of his greens. So there I might go work with him. On the right-hand side for potential, another thing that we're doing that we want to show our students is, hey, this is your average score, but if you remove some of these errors, whether they be driving into penalties, approach errors, so on and so forth, their potential is, say, 69.2 in that case, or you can go, by each player and see where their potential is to help motivate them to take that next step. Whether it's, in this case, these are tour players, or whether it's a guy that's just trying to break 80 or break 90 for the first time, you can kind of get that high level of what they should be working on. Bottom 2, for instance, you can see that they need to be working on driving accuracy. So Marvin Caveman is missing to the right 30% of the time and averaging almost a penalty per round. So that's something that you might want to work on with that student. By default, it's just looking at the last 5 rounds. You can change that in the filtering to look at any number of rounds that you want to go look at, or specific courses, specific round types. So you could look at just tournaments, for example, or casual rounds, however you want to go look at that data. Similarly, we've got a table that you could look at. So all this information is available in a table form too, that you can go look at and compare your players kind of side by side, see how they're doing, either with the graphics that you have here, or you can do it all by text, whatever you're more familiar with, to go look at that. And we're adding new statistics to this all the time. But so I would use that primarily if I'm a teaching professional, and let's say I'm walking to the driving range right now, and I don't know what it is that I want to work on with a particular player. You can pull this up right now and say, okay, Brooks Cupcake, we were going to work on irons today, but I can see that you've been struggling with putting, missing some short ones. Maybe we should go look at that today instead of what we had been working on. Make sure that we're making progress there as well and not giving away strokes somewhere we shouldn't be. So you can potentially convince that player that always wants to pound drivers that, hey, you should be working on short game, or you should be working on putting based on statistics, and see that hopefully translate into their game, and see that putting stat trend better week on week, for example. From there, we can flip over to a coaching piece. So let's say I have a team, and this is more like high school or say college oriented, or I got a competitive team. Maybe I've got competitive players that are playing in junior tournaments. I could come here and I can compare, again, players side by side, what their, tee to green stats are, driving, approach, short game, and putting, or what the other letters stand for, to kind of see them, sort them in that way to see how your different players are doing. You can have friendly competition. So on the right-hand side, you've got records, right? So you can say, okay, who's hitting the longest drives? If I click on that, it'll give me kind of a top 5 list of longest drives my team has hit, who's doing best with 3-putt avoidance, kind of so on and so forth. So you can have these friendly competitions within the team to see how the players are doing, and get them motivated to try to climb those individual leaderboards with whatever stats, they might be particularly good at. The other piece we can do is, from a strategy perspective, if your guys are playing the same courses, week in and week out, you can start to look at how they're doing and think about things like course management. So here I've got all these players, and this is looking at the PGA Championship where they played at Bethpage Black. I can see where they all hit their tee shots and what they scored from those various places. You can go kind of hole by hole and see, one, where the hole ranks. So this is for the whole team. This would be the second hardest hole that the team faced, what they averaged on this hole, birdies, pars, etc. But you can see where they hit it and what they scored from those locations. You'll have those both kind of from the fairway, and if you zoom in, you can see where their approach shots hit as well and what they scored from those locations. So you can try to coach the players. Hey, you want to avoid short and left, that's dead. You want to favor the right side here, or maybe this isn't the best place to go. Oh, dropped off my screen here. Pull that back up. Or you can start to say, maybe you want to favor the left side here, or you don't want to hit driver here, or 3-wood's a better option based on statistics for those courses that they're playing. If they're playing multiple courses, it's very simple to go here and say, okay, well, let's go look at PGA Championship or PGA National, for instance, and it'll change courses. You can go flip through and talk strategy and show those players how they're doing on those individual courses. Again, from that coaching side, you have the same tables and same ability to go look at their statistics from that standpoint. So at a high level, that's the data that's available. Again, you can go look at an individual player from here to go deep dive as deep as you want to go into their own statistics. You can get there the same way from the coaching side. So let's say I'm diving through this and Jordan's come to me with a question and I want to work with him. I can click on him and it'll take me to his individual statistics. So now I have a full list of all the courses and rounds that he's played. Clicking on any of those rounds, I can see the actual scorecard of what he did on each hole. If I click on any given hole, it'll show me on the left-hand side kind of a high level where he went and how he got to that score. So if I wanted to see, okay, how did he bogey it? Well, he drove it to the left. Looks like he got himself in some trouble and couldn't get up and down. But so all that information is here. The strokes gain piece will give you a bit of a heat map of how that round went. So you could see if your player, for instance, starts to get fatigued towards the end of the round and those shots get worse, or if in this case, it looks like Jordan kind of rallied those last 6 or 7 holes and turned a bad round around. You can kind of get a snapshot for how he's doing there and across different categories. So driving, approach, short game. When he's having good holes, what is he doing well or doing poorly? So any of these individual categories also, you can kind of deep down and get more information. So if I wanted to go dive into shot distribution, for example, now what it's showing me is Jordan's approach shots from those 5 rounds, where he's hitting them, how close he's hitting them from different yardage categories. So I can go as close as less than 75 yards, where he's hitting the green 92% of the time. And I can start getting further from the hole and start to see that maybe he starts to miss left and miss short the further we get from the hole. So that might be something I want to work with him on and figure out why we're missing left and short when we get to certain yardage ranges. So you can dive into that. You can dive into kind of putting and say, okay, how often are we 2-putting or 3-putting from different ranges, and all that information is available. You can see kind of feet of putts made, putts per gur, putts per hole, typical stats that you're used to are all kind of sprinkled throughout here. So there's a ton of statistical data on those rounds that are being created for them. And all I have to do is track the shots in the V1 game app and you get all of this information. You can dive into strokes gained, and here what we're showing is strokes gained by category and how that trends kind of round by round. So with Jordan in this particular example, you can see that the red is probably the most up and down of all of those categories, the most inconsistent for these rounds. So his putting was the most inconsistent from round to round in the sample size that's here. And then probably the next most fluid category would be driving. So if I wanted to work with him, I would say your driving and putting has been the least consistent. So that's probably the area we want to go focus on. 3 keys. So again, this is a playing professional, so he's very good. He doesn't have a lot of mistakes, but it does show you that, hey, he's 3-putting maybe once around or 2-chipping once around. So those are things you might want to go work with him on to go improve that performance and help him take it to the next level, let's say. So you can do that to deep dive on any players from there, from either view. You can deep dive here, but the more they play, all of those rounds will pre-populate in this app for you every time you open it, so that you can help them swing their best swing and also score their best using the V1 Coach app. If I come in here, just to show you quickly how you would go add a new team. Let's say if I didn't have a team when I came in, it'll ask me this same dialogue on the front window, and I can say create a new team. It'll take me to a box where I can go set that up. So I would basically go give my team a name. In this case, I'll name it V1 Test. It'll pre-populate it with your email and name for the coach. You can change that if you want to. You'll give it a default password for the coach and a password for the players. The coach's password you'll need if you're going to edit the team, add players, remove players. Only the coach can do that. The player password is if you have a player that didn't receive a direct invite and they want to join your team, you can give them the player password and they would be able to join if you didn't invite them yourself. You can go from your camera roll and you can add a logo if you want. In this case, I'll add my alma mater, but so you can add a logo. You can pick team colors here from the left. So we've got a pre-populated list where you can pick whatever you want as your team colors, and it'll really rebrand the entire app. And then you would add whatever students you want to add via email here. So I could add a player or multiple players here. For instance, the visible to players button here, this switch, basically it controls whether once you add a player to a team, if they can see the other teammates on their team. So if you're a teaching professional, you would probably set this to false so that other players don't know who else you're coaching and can't see their stats. But if you were a high school or a college coach or a coach of a competitive team, you would set that to true so that your players could see the other players on the team and share data and have those competitive challenges with them. So what do the fields mean? If you tap on that, basically it explains everything I'm telling you verbally here, how to go get that information. But so you've set up a logo, you set up team colors, you can say done and submit. It's going to ask you to pick a home course. This is optional, but let's say you have a course that you're teaching pro at or that you play as a high school or college. You can set that as your home course. It'll give you the option to email the players if you want. You don't have to. And then it'll send out that message to them in the phone app so that they can join your team. All right, so that's how you would add a new team, and you'd have that team available to you in the app. Obviously, it rebrands the entire app like I'm showing here. It rebrands the entire app to those colors. Now, those colors I chose were awful, but when the player gets it in the phone, it'll also rebrand it with that logo and whatnot. So if I go back to the other team, you can see that rebranding. You can see the nice, pretty logo and the colors that are used throughout the app. So it has a look and feel like it belongs to that team, to that golf course in cooperation with V1. So that's a high level of what the coaching app is and how you can use that to manage players. Now we'll kind of switch gears and I'll show you how on the phone app your players will track their games and how they get that information to you so that you can see what that looks like. All right, so what your players are going to do when they get on their phone, they'll have the V1 game app that they've just downloaded. Once they download and register and log in, this is what they'll see. Hold on, let me start over again. When your player downloads the V1 game app, they'll download and register for our GPS shot tracking app. Once they log in, they'll see any requests that you've given them to join their team. So in this case, you've requested that I join V1 University. I'll say, go ahead and join. And you'll see that it immediately rebrands the app. So it adds my team logo, it changes the colors to be my team colors, and makes it, look like it's won with the team from there. You'll see if I go into the analyze section that I'll see myself where I've played 154 rounds, but you'll see that team added, and then I can add any friends that I want if I want to see their demo or see their accounts. But this is now the shot tracking app that your players will use. So anytime they play around a golf, they'll hit the play button. It'll look for nearby courses. In this case, I can pick any course nearby me, or I can search any of our 40,000 golf courses that we have in our database. I'll select one, and I can select the round type. The importance here is that it allows me later then to change my data by whatever this round type is. So I can look at my performance just in tournaments or in casual rounds or what have you. It'll pull up the golf course. It's a GPS-based app, so they can use this while they're playing. If I was on the golf course, you'd see the blue dot with my location, just like you would in any other GPS app. But I can use this as a rangefinder to go see yardages to trees, to bunkers, to the green, whatever I want. And when I'm ready, if I'm standing on the tee box, I can hit the plus button. It'll add a marker, and I can tap around to add that wherever I want to. So in this case, I'll mark a tee shot, tell it that I hit driver, and I'm good to go. Again, if I was on the golf course, it would add that to my location and do it that way. Our watch app allows you to do this same shot adding from the watch, to where you can glance at the watch, get a quick yardage, and track a shot from there. But so let's pretend like I'm continuing on. I hit it to 124 yards out. Coincidentally, this is also how you would track around if you wanted to do it from your house. So let's say I played earlier today. In this example, I played earlier today. I didn't want to track the rounds, or I didn't want to track the shots while I was playing. Maybe it was a tournament and I wasn't allowed to have my phone out or my watch out. So I just remember where I was playing, and I can then use the app to track it after the fact without actually being on the golf course. So now I can move the flag to the day's location just by grabbing it and dragging it wherever I need to drag it. I can go move this putt. You'll notice on the bottom of the screen, it's telling me how far away that is from the pin that I just moved. So I can say, okay, I had a 24-foot putt, mark that one. Let's say I hit that up to gimme range. I can hit the G button, which is a gimme, and it'll add that putt. Now you can see my scores now 4. All my shots are tracked. So I would go throughout that, throughout the app, tracking shots in that fashion, very quick, just to kind of tap around and say, okay, this is where I hit it. You'll notice that the color of the marker changes depending on the lie. So if it's in the fairway, it becomes kind of a brighter green. If it's on the tee, it's blue. And you'll see that if I get up by the green and mark something in the bunker, it changes to yellow to show you that it's detected that I hit that shot from the sand. But you would continue to do this for the, let's say the 18 holes or 9 holes that you're playing. You track each shot kind of in this way. Let's say another gimme and I made a 5. The player can rotate and see the scorecard. This is very similar to the scorecard I showed on the coaching app. You can see the team logo is here as well. So again, we've kind of got that continuity of branding for your team throughout the app. And it's just from tracking those locations, as I showed you, it's showing my various stats in terms of fairways, greens. It's already the app on the back end is calculating that for me. If I click on any of these holes, it'll then show you a quick map on the left. So I can say, how did I shoot a 5 on that hole? Oh yeah, I hit it in the bunker. Okay, now I've got that. Just rotating the app back will take me back to the shot tracking view. And I could go through that and track all of my rounds either on the golf course or after the fact, sitting in the comfort of my home to get those in. And when I'm done, I'll exit. If I had tracked all 18 holes, I could sign the scorecard and say, yeah, make this official. That just means that I don't need a reminder to go back and edit it. It's complete. If I haven't completed it, I can hit save and exit, and it'll just save my progress. It'll show you for the 2 holes that I tracked that I shot a 9. I was 1 over. I was driving the ball well, but my irons were poor from hitting that shot in the bunker, obviously. And then one nice thing it does is it then analyzes further into that data and tells you why it thinks you did well or did poorly. So in this case, I was poor around the green because I didn't hit it close enough out of that bunker, and so on and so forth. I'll show you what that looks like for a round that's completed, but you get this instant analysis of your round every time you play. So if I go dive into, you'll see that round at the top. I didn't sign it. This is what I meant about the reminder. Since I didn't sign it, it's telling me, hey, you got a round in progress that you might want to complete. The other ones that don't have the red text, I've completed those rounds. You can see myself, I've played 150 rounds across the United States. So you get kind of that nice map of places that I've played. And I can go dive into any one of these rounds and kind of get more information. So let's go dive into Old American. If I go hole by hole, it'll show you every shot I hit and then analysis of those shots. So one nice thing is since you're just tracking locations, we use that data to then track how far that shot went and all of that information. So you're not actually telling it that I hit a drive 262 yards. It's calculating it based on the locations of those shots and also giving you like the strokes gain data. So I could look at the strokes gain for an individual shot and see that, hey, I gained, almost a tenth of a shot with that drive by hitting it in the fairway, for example. So every shot in this round was captured using the technique I just showed you previously. I like to use the watch personally because it's easy to just tap there. If I go to the scorecard, you can see all that information is there. Again, I can click on any individual hole for a real quick snapshot of how I got to that. And then similar to what I showed you on the coaching app, if I click strokes gained, it's going to show you kind of a heat map of where I did well or poorly. So you can see kind of in this middle of the round where I started to struggle and make bogeys. I can also see that the main reason is because of driving and approach. My driving and approach got kind of wild there. And you can see I somewhat turned it around, and barring one, particularly poor approach shot on 14, started to play better after that. So when you're done on a round like this, again, you can go to the main menu and it'll show you that quick summary of that round. So in this case, I shot an 83. I had a really poor putting day for me relative to a scratch player, and also my irons poorly. If I scroll at the top here, it's going to give me kind of a breakdown of each of those categories and why it thinks I did that well or poorly relative to my own performance. So for putting, that was an awful putting day. It was an awful putting day for me because I had 3 putts and I missed 4 putts inside 6 feet. All right, so if I cleaned those things up, I could have had a much better day. It was an average approach day for me. So I typically lose strokes to a scratch player every time I play, so that's not a surprise. But it is also highlighting that when I miss the green, I tend to miss left and I tend to miss short. So what was going on? Was I miss clubbing? Was I miss hitting the ball? That's something I can work on with my teaching professional and improve that area of my game. I was average around the greens that day, and it was an average driving day for me, though I did tend to favor the right. So again, maybe something I want to bring up to my professional and say, okay, what's leading to that as being my miss. On the bottom here, you've got a variety of statistics, your typical statistics in terms of fairways, greens, putts. At the bottom, you've got the 3 keys that, are really kind of big things that if you cleaned up, make an impact to your score. So things like 2 chips, 3 putts, penalties. And what this is telling me is if I just eliminated those big mistakes, I could have made that 83 a 79. I probably would have been much happier with my day. So keeping an eye on those 3 keys is always important. So you can try to limit the big mistakes or your big miss. Also, I have the shot frequency. So this is telling me throughout the round what types of shots that I was hitting, so that if I'm going to go practice, I can see that while I did have quite a few shots from 75 and 30 yards, really that's because I missed a lot of greens. If I was going to go work on my irons, it's between 126 and 175 yards is where I'm hitting most of those approach shots. So those are the irons I'd probably want to go focus on in my practice. Again, they'll get this round summary, or you'll get this round summary every time you play. And so you can start to spot things that tend to recur. If it's approach game or putting, you can start to spot those things that continue to cause you pain and then work on it with your teaching professional. Now, as you do more and more rounds and you come to the analysis section, again, I've got 154 rounds in here. I can go get a summary of all of those rounds. So now this isn't an individual round view. It's a look at all of my data or what I have it filtered to. In this case, I'm looking at my last 20 rounds for all types. I could change the filters, let's say to tournament or to any of these others if I wanted to look at less data. But it'll show me overall for me. As I told you, I tend to lose strokes with the iron game. So I could go then dive into why do I tend to lose strokes with the iron game by looking at things like shot distribution. So in this case, it's showing me my proximity and my shot map on the left from various distances. So 125 to 150 yards, there's 100 to 125 yards. And what I notice in my own game is obviously my GER percentage tends to go down the further I get from the hole, but I also tend to start missing short and missing left. So that might be something that I work on with my teaching professional to avoid that left and short miss or miss clubbing or whatever's causing me to miss left. And then I could also use it from a course management perspective where if there's water or a bunker short and left that I want to avoid, then I know I've got to be extra careful when I get into these yardage ranges because that's where I tend to mishit the ball. So all that information is available, and really it's summing up all of the data that's in the app just based on that location that you put in, right? You didn't have to go tell it whether you hit the fairway and tell it all that information. We got it just from the location that you put in. We can also take that and do things like personal bests. So you saw in the team view that we were comparing, long drives and whatnot. The individual player has this as well. So a lot of times, you're watching the PGA Tour and you'll see that, hey, this person hasn't three-putted in the last 40 holes. You can go look at what your streaks are and say, okay, what's the longest you've gone without three-putting? What's the most pars you've had in a round? What's your longest hole out, for instance? And you can go through that data. Again, changing the filters will change what rounds get counted in here, but you can kind of look at some interesting stats and see how your golf game is progressing. We have driving distance stats in here, right? So we have quite a bit of stats. So as deep as you want to go, the information is here. On the front end, we're trying to make it simple for you, but we can show how your average drive is progressing or your long drive. So in this case, let's say me and my pro are working on driving distance. I could come in here and see if it's really translating, if I'm starting to hit the drives further. Same thing with like strokes gained. Say we're really focusing on minimizing driving mistakes. Well, I can come in here and see if my strokes gain, let's say, is trending up like it appears to be in those last 5 or 6 rounds. And it confirms that the progress I'm making with my teacher is better for driving. I can do the same thing driving into approach, where I'm looking at my strokes gained approach. And I can see for me, I'm somewhat inconsistent with my approach game and that strokes gained. So that might be somewhere where I do want to work on with my teaching professional. But again, there's quite a bit of data behind each of these. I'll show you the putting real quick as well, where you can go in and say, okay, what's my 3-putt percentage from 25 to 30 feet? So 15% of the time, so a little less than 1 in 5, I'm 3-putting from 25 to 30 feet. That might be something I want to work on. Is it speed control? Is it direction? Maybe next time I should get a putting lesson the next time I'm with my teaching professional, for instance. But all that data is available at your fingertips just from tracking those shots as you play. Again, we added a team. So to add that team, I can go dive in. It's going to go get the latest and greatest. So it's going to go synchronize and get all those players' data. And now I can see how my teammates are doing, what their stats are, how I compare to them. I can go look at those records to see if I'm on any of those leaderboards for that friendly competition and see how I can get myself higher on that leaderboard, let's say. And then the strategy piece here is as well. So I can come in here and look and say, okay, I got a tournament this weekend. I want to go look at that course and say, where should I be hitting it? How do I make better decisions? All of that's available to the player as well. And they can add their friends so that you can go look at their accounts and look at their data as well when you're in here. So in a nutshell, that's the V1 game app. That's how the player will interface with it. That's how they'll track shots. We've got some new exciting features coming like auto shot tracking where they won't even have to pull the phone out. We'll use their GPS to make some pretty good guesses at where their shots were to make it even easier to get that data in. But once they enter that data and they've put those rounds in, it'll immediately sync with the coach's app to where the coach can go view those rounds, see how they're playing, see what they're doing, and prescribe better lessons, make sure their players are focusing on the right things to go take that next step in their game. And that's V1 Game and V1 Coach.